sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
So you know how sometimes you get those news days that are like, whoa, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, definitely. Happens all the time, especially these days, it feels like.
Right. And that's exactly how it felt on March 21st, 2025.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
The White House, right?
Okay.
President Trump and Air Force Chief of Staff Gen David W. Allvin, they hold this big announcement.
Big announcement.
And they unveil something.
What was it?
That has huge, huge implications for air power, for like the future of aerial warfare.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm intrigued.
It's big. So we are diving deep today into the F-47.
The F-47.
That's it. That's the one.
Okay, I've heard a little bit about this.
This is the Air Force's brand spanking new sixth generation fighter.
Sixth generation.
Sixth generation.
Okay, so beyond the F-35.
Way beyond. And
Okay.
we're going to try to understand just how big of a leap this is.
Okay.
Even beyond the F-22 Raptor.
Yeah, the Raptor is an amazing piece of engineering.
Incredible machine.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So what are we looking at here for sources?
So we're going to be pulling from a few different things.
Okay.
We've got statements from Gen Allvin himself, right from that announcement.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. We got some Air Force releases that have come out.
Okay.
And then some really early reporting, like hot off the presses, from Air and Space Forces magazine.
Okay, cool.
So we're going to put all that together and try to paint a picture of this thing.
Yeah, this is a fascinating moment to be talking about this stuff because we're getting like our first real glimpse into what the future of air combat could actually look like.
Absolutely. And, you know, you mentioned the sources we've got.
Yeah.
I think they really give us a good, like, initial framework for trying to understand what they're actually promising here.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
So let's start unpacking this thing.
Okay.
I mean, the name itself, right? The F-47.
F-47, yeah.
That's the first thing that kind of grabs you.
Definitely has a ring to it.
But even more significant than the name
Okay.
is how Jim Allvin described it. He called it, quote, the world's first crewed sixth-generation fighter,
Okay.
close quote.
That's a very deliberate statement, I think, especially when you consider that you've got other countries out there
Right.
also working on some pretty advanced aircraft.
Absolutely.
It's like they're putting a marker down, aren't they?
Yeah, they're drawing a line in the sand.
Exactly.
They're saying, like, we're first,
Oh, yeah.
and it's a crewed sixth-generation fighter.
And I think it's really interesting that they emphasize that it's crude
Oh, yeah.
because there's this whole ongoing debate right now
Yeah.
about the role of unmanned systems, drones essentially, in future wars.
Huge debate.
And it's almost like they're saying, no, we believe in having a pilot in the cockpit for this next generation.
Right. A human being is calling the shots.
Yeah, a human being is making the decisions in the heat of the moment.
And I think this also speaks directly to some of the claims that we've seen, you know, from potential adversaries. You know who we're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
not going to name names, but
We all know.
we all know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, I think, that they're presenting this F-47 alongside the B-21 Raider.
The B-21 Raider, the new bomber.
That's the one, that new bomber,
Yeah.
as kind of the cornerstones of this whole sixth-generation fleet.
So it's like a two-pronged approach.
It really is. It's a comprehensive strategy for modernizing their whole air power approach.
Definitely.
And I think this gets to something that they keep saying over and over again.
What's that?
This idea of next-generation stealth,
Okay.
sensor fusion,
Yeah.
and long-range strike capability.
I mean, those are like the big, sexy, headline-grabbing terms, right?
They sound awesome.
They sound amazing. But we got to dig a little deeper, figure out what they actually mean.
Totally, totally. We're going to do that. But first, let's talk about the fact that when they gave us that first glimpse of the F-47,
Yeah, the renderings.
the renderings, they were being, shall we say, suggestive?
Suggestive. Okay, I like that.
Right. They kept a lot of stuff under wraps.
Right. Still a lot of mystery.
A lot of mystery, and that just makes you more curious.
You're like, what are they hiding?
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
But even with all the details that they obscured, like they blacked out in the images,
Right.
there were definitely visual cues that set it apart from the F-22 and the F-35.
Okay, so what jumped out at you when you first saw it?
I mean, the nose, right?
Echoes. Okay.
It looks incredibly stealthy.
Sleek. Right.
Sleek, like piercing the air.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then you've got that bubble canopy.
Oh, the bubble canopy.
Classic touch.
Very classic. Yeah, like a throwback almost.
But then, you know, it gets a little different.
Yeah.
You see that sharply angled fuselage
Angled fuselage, okay.
and what they call a chiseled chine.
Chiseled chine. Now, that's not something you see every day.
No, it's a real departure from what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and I think what's really intriguing is how those visible design elements, the stuff we can actually see, probably connect to those advancements they keep talking about.
Like how so?
Well, take the stealthy nose, for example.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that suggests they've refined the whole low observable technology even further.
Taking it to the next level.
Absolutely. But then you got those less conventional features, right?
Yeah, like what?
Like the canards.
The canards.
Yeah, and the wings with that like really noticeable upward sweep.
It's a unique shape.
Yeah, and canards, for example, those can give you a huge advantage in maneuverability.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So you can make much quicker turns and have better control at different speeds.
It is more agile.
Much more agile, yeah. And then that unique wing shape.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be tied to achieving that significantly longer range Jen Allvin was talking about.
Oh, interesting.
Or even, enhancing the stealth even further against certain types of radar.
Wow. So like we're only seeing the surface?
Exactly.
But even from that, we can start to kind of piece together.
Yeah, extrapolate.
Extrapolate, there you go.
What their design priorities might have been.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So even these limited views, they give us some really interesting clues.
They really do.
Yeah.
And speaking of range,
Okay, range.
that really stood out to me.
Yeah, it was a big part of the announcement.
Jen Allvin specifically said, and I'm quoting here,
Okay.
it has significantly longer range than the F-22.
Significantly longer.
That's what he said.
I mean, just for context, the F-22 can already cover over 1,850 miles.
With external fuel tanks.
Yeah, with those external fuel tanks. So when they say significantly longer,
Right.
we're talking about a whole different ballgame.
We're talking about a real step change.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about where they might need to use this thing.
Right, like the Pacific.
The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So having that extra range.
Huge advantage.
Absolutely crucial.
And, if we connect this back to like the big strategic picture,
Yeah.
there have been these discussions within the Air Force about developing different variants of the NGAD platform.
NGAD, remind me what that stands for again.
Next Generation Air Dominance.
Right, right.
That's the overarching program that this F-47 is a part of.
Okay, got it.
And the idea was to have maybe a longer range, bigger variant designed specifically for the Pacific.
Okay.
And then potentially a smaller one that would be better suited for like the European theater.
So like horses for courses.
Exactly. Different tools for different jobs.
Yeah.
And it's possible that this F-47 we're seeing now, it represents a design that kind of checks both of those boxes.
The jack of all trades.
Yeah. Or maybe it leans more towards that long-range capability that's so crucial for the Pacific.
Makes sense.
Because it's not just about flying further, right?
Yep, right.
It's about fundamentally changing the whole strategic game.
Oh, so.
Because if you have that longer range, you can project power much more effectively.
I see.
You don't have to rely so much on forward operating bases.
Which can be vulnerable.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
aerial refueling, which also has its risks.
Makes a lot of sense.
So it's a real game changer in terms of strategy.
And then there's the timeline they're talking about.
Oh, yeah. The timeline.
That raised some eyebrows for me.
Yeah, it's aggressive.
They're moving fast.
Yeah.
The Air Force made a point of stating that the F-47 represents a significant advancement over the F-22 with this modular design
Right. Modular design.
for long-term dominance.
They're thinking ahead.
They are. But then Jen Allvin also mentioned that their goal is to actually field this thing
Okay.
during President Trump's current administration.
Which ends in January 2029.
That's right. So we're looking at like less than 6 years.
Yeah, that seems, I don't know, maybe a little optimistic.
It does, right? Especially when you compare it to how long it took to develop the F-22.
I mean, the F-22 took something like 6 years.
Just from selection to its first production flight.
Exactly. So are they maybe over-promising here based on those X-plane tests?
It's a good question. It's a good question. But they did mention that they've got 5 years of X-plane testing under their belt.
5 years of X-plane testing.
Yeah, involving hundreds of hours of flight testing.
Okay, so they've been busy.
They have. And those X-plane programs, they're designed to mature key technologies.
Right.
So they're trying to like iron out the kinks and reduce the risks.
Yeah, de-risk the whole program.
Exactly, before they go into full-scale development.
That makes sense.
And it's also worth noting that we've been hearing these whispers, these rumors
Yeah, the chatter.
about NGAD prototype flights.
Way back in the mid-2010s.
That's right. So they've been working on this stuff behind the scenes
For quite a while.
for a long time. So
So the timeline, while aggressive,
yeah,
it's probably built on this really solid foundation of research and development.
they're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. But, there's always challenges.
Always.
in transitioning from a successful X-plane program to a fully integrated combat-ready aircraft.
It's a big leap.
It is. It's a huge leap.
And then we come to the part that I think everyone really wants to know about.
Yeah.
The cost.
Money.
The money, the big question mark. Right.
Jen Allvin made some pretty bold statements about this.
Like what?
He said, and I'm quoting here,
Yeah.
the F-47 will cost less and be more adaptable to future threats, and we will have more of the F-47s in our inventory.
Okay, so he's promising a lot.
He is. Lower cost, more adaptability, and greater numbers.
If they can actually deliver on all three of those,
It'll be a huge win.
a massive win, yeah.
So let's compare it to the F-22 again, for context.
Okay.
The F-22 had a flyaway cost of roughly $140 million per aircraft.
$140 million, that's a lot of money.
It is, but then the total program cost,
Including all the development and everything.
all of that,
Yeah.
ballooned to about $350 million per aircraft.
Wow, that's more than double.
More than double, and part of that was because they cut the production run so drastically.
Right. They only ended up building 186 F-22s.
That's it.
So what Jen Allvin is hinting at here, this idea of a lower individual cost and a larger fleet size,
Yeah.
it's a really significant shift in thinking.
Because there's been talk, privately, that they're thinking about a potential NGAD force size of somewhere between 220 and 250 aircraft.
So significantly more than the F-22.
Way more.
That suggests a real commitment to having a larger presence.
Definitely.
And then you've got President Trump, who's being very coy about the actual price tag.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to disclose it.
He said it was due to security concerns.
Right, related to the technology and the size of the aircraft.
He even said, quote, good-sized plane.
Good-sized plane. Interesting.
So he's not giving anything away.
Okay.
But I think the key takeaway here
Yeah.
is that promise of lower cost and higher numbers.
Yeah. There's huge.
It suggests a pretty big change in strategy.
Right. They might be moving away from that idea of having a small fleet of super expensive, exquisite aircraft.
Right.
And going more towards a larger, more adaptable force.
That can be everywhere.
Exactly. It's a quantity over, well, maybe not over quality.
Right, but a balance.
Balance, yeah.
Different balance than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and if they can actually pull it off,
It would be a big deal.
it'd be a very big deal. Yeah.
And this idea of building more of them ties directly into the whole discussion about sustainability and adaptability.
Right, because if you're going to have more aircraft, they need to be easier to maintain and keep flying.
Exactly. And General Allvin was very clear about this.
What did he say?
He said the F-47 will be, quote, more sustainable, supportable, and have higher availability
Okay.
than our current fifth-generation fighters.
So they're really focusing on making this thing easier to operate and maintain.
They are, which makes a lot of sense when you think back to the early days of stealth.
Oh, yeah.
Remember all the challenges they had with those early stealth aircraft?
Oh, yeah. Maintaining those stealth coatings was a nightmare.
Labor-intensive?
Incredibly labor-intensive, yeah. And time-consuming.
It was a constant battle to keep those things flying.
It really was.
And I think Jen Allvin was making a comparison here.
To what?
The B-21?
The B-21, that new bomber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which has been described as a daily flyer.
A daily flyer.
That's how they're talking about it.
Because it's so much easier to maintain.
Exactly. And it's because of the advancements in its stealth technology and overall maintainability.
So they're applying those same lessons learned to the F-47.
It sounds like it.
It's not just about the fancy new technology.
Right.
It's about making sure that the aircraft can actually fly when you need it to.
Being reliable.
Yeah, reliability is key.
And then there's this whole built-to-adapt philosophy.
Yeah, that sounds crucial in today's world.
Absolutely, because technology changes so fast.
It's so fast.
That you can't afford to have your aircraft become obsolete.
Right, they need to be able to keep up.
Exactly. So when they talk about digital design and open systems architecture,
Now, what does that actually mean in practice?
what they're saying is they want to make it super easy to upgrade the F-47 down the line.
Okay.
So we're talking about software upgrades, new sensors, different mission systems, all that stuff.
Without having to, rip the whole plane apart?
Exactly. It's about modularity. It's about being able to swap things in and out as technology evolves.
Yeah, so it's future-proof in a sense.
It's as future-proof as they can make it.
Yeah, because they don't want to get stuck with that kind of technological lock-in.
Right, where you're stuck with old tech that can't compete.
And that happens all the time in these big defense programs.
It does.
Things get outdated so quickly.
So they're really trying to avoid that with the F-47.
Yeah, make it more adaptable, more flexible.
And I think that ties into another claim that Jen Allvin made.
What was that?
He said it'll require significantly less manpower and infrastructure to deploy.
Okay, so it's more logistically efficient.
Way more.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference in terms of how and where they can actually use the aircraft.
Absolutely. It gives them a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, definitely.
So now let's talk about the contract.
Okay, the contract.
They announced that Boeing was awarded the contract for the engineering and manufacturing development phase.
So can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
So this is the phase where they're taking those conceptual designs, that prototype work.
The early stuff.
Yeah, and they're starting to turn it into a real tangible aircraft.
Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road.
This is it. This is where it gets real.
Yeah.
So Boeing's going to be responsible for maturing all those different technologies.
Integrating them into the actual airframe.
Building a small number of test aircraft.
Test aircraft, okay.
That they're going to put through the ringer.
Rigorous testing.
Absolutely. Got to make sure it meets all the Air Force's requirements.
Yeah, no room for error.
None. And what's interesting is that the contract also includes these options for low-rate initial production.
Low-rate initial production? What's that?
So basically, they're building in the option to start producing a small number of aircraft even before the development phase is fully finished.
Oh, so they're trying to streamline the transition from development to production.
Exactly. And they did something similar with the B-21.
Oh, so it's a proven approach.
It seems to be working for them.
Interesting.
But it's important to remember that some of the big decisions are still to come.
Like what?
Like where they're going to base the F-47.
Right, basing decisions are huge.
And a lot of the other key program elements.
Oh, they're still figuring some stuff out.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Makes sense.
Now, Boeing was very quick to point out their long history with fighter aircraft.
Oh, yeah, they've got a pretty impressive lineage.
They do. They developed the P-51 Mustang.
The Mustang. Iconic.
Iconic. The F-4 Phantom.
Workhorse of the Vietnam War.
The F-15 Eagle.
Still flying today.
Still going strong.
Right.
And the FA-18 Hornet.
Navy workhorse.
That's the one. And even the EA-18 Growler, which is based on the Hornet.
So they've got a lot of experience.
They do, but what's interesting to me is that the Air Force didn't really give us a specific reason
for choosing Boeing.
For choosing Boeing over Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin would have been the other obvious contender.
They were definitely in the running.
So why the silence?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And, you know, Boeing has had its challenges recently.
Yeah, they've had some issues with some of their programs.
They have. But Lockheed Martin has also had its fair share of problems.
The F-35 program has been, well, let's just say it's had its moments.
It's had its ups and downs.
A lot of downs.
Yeah, and those delivery holds and sustainment costs.
Not ideal.
Not ideal at all, but Lockheed has also been doing a lot of work upgrading the existing F-22 fleet.
Right, keeping those Raptors flying.
So it's possible the Air Force looked at all of this.
All the pros and cons.
Boeing's proposed technology, their cost projections, their track record.
Maybe their management approach.
And they made a decision based on all those factors.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. And Lockheed Martin was clearly not happy about the decision.
They put out a statement expressing their disappointment.
They did. And they said they're looking forward to further discussions.
So they're not giving up.
Not at all. But for now, we're left to speculate about the specific reasons why Boeing got the nod.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
It is.
Hopefully we'll get some more clarity down the line.
We might. But in the meantime, General Allvin definitely left us with a powerful statement about what he expects the F-47 to do.
What did he say?
He said, and I'm quoting again, "It will strengthen our global position, keeping our enemies off balance and at bay."
Strong words.
And he said it would deliver a message of certain defeat to anyone who challenges us.
Wow, so they're not mincing words.
They're not. They're really emphasizing the strategic importance of this aircraft.
Yeah, they see it as absolutely essential for maintaining air superiority.
In a world that's getting more and more complex and competitive.
And more dangerous.
And more dangerous, yeah.
So it's not just about having a cool new plane. It's about projecting power.
It's about deterrence.
Yeah, making sure nobody even thinks about messing with them.
Exactly. So if we pull all this together...
Yeah, let's do a recap.
It sounds like the F-47 is a major leap forward from the F-22.
In a lot of ways.
We're talking greater range, better stealth, faster development, potentially lower costs, and a larger fleet size.
So it's like they took everything they learned from the F-22.
And cranked it up to 11.
Yeah, and then added some new stuff on top.
Exactly. And I think this really feels like a pivotal moment.
A turning point.
For the future of air power.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think?
I mean, the unveiling of the F-47, it shows how committed the Air Force is to maintaining air dominance.
In a world that's changing so rapidly.
Yeah, and they're not just relying on brute force either.
Right.
They're focusing on sustainability, adaptability, and building a larger force.
So it's a more holistic approach.
It is. It's not just about having the best technology. It's about having the best overall system.
And I think that's what makes this so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the F-47 itself.
Right.
It's about what it represents.
A new way of thinking about air combat.
Exactly. And this whole announcement, it really gets you thinking about the bigger picture.
The big picture.
Like, how do these huge technological advancements...
Like the F-47.
Yeah, how do they fit into the geopolitical landscape, which is constantly in flux?
Yeah, it's like a chessboard where the pieces are constantly moving.
And the rules are changing.
Yeah.
And then you've got this whole question of what it actually means to be a sixth-generation fighter.
Right. It's not just a new number.
It's a whole new philosophy of air combat.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to watch how the F-47 evolves.
From these initial glimpses that we've gotten...
The renderings, the promises.
To a fully operational aircraft.
Flying, fighting, and shaping the skies of the future.
And what's it going to mean for military strategy, for international relations?
Yeah. How will other countries react?
It's a lot to consider.
A lot to consider.
It really is. It's a whole new era of air power that's dawning.
Yeah, and we're just starting to see the first light.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up.
That's right. Buckle up.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what